I'm happy. This is the first opportunity I've had to take a call on the state sector and public finance reform bill, and happy to make a few observations about these particular clauses in Part 2 of the bill that deal with financial reporting for government agencies. And I was interested in looking through. There's a few points of clarification that I'd like to seek on these matters as well, not having been involved in the committee deliberations of this bill. But it's clear that some of the changes. One of the things that the bill seeks to achieve is a more connected and joined-up public service, and to break down some of the silo mentality that exists within the public service at the moment. And I think that's a worthy aim, and it's something that we in the Labour Party are very, very supportive of. But one of the tensions with that has always been that ultimately, under the existing arrangements with public finance in particular, is the chief executive is ultimately going to be the person who is responsible for how public agency money is, or public money, taxpayer money, is spent. So under this legislation that we're debating at the moment, where we're talking about specifying the financial responsibilities of departmental chief executives to make it clear that they include financial stewardship for the long term. So that's what we're doing in one part. We're saying to the chief executives, we want you to take a long-term view of the financial stewardship of your departments. But then in another area, we're making it clear that other departments, as well as the one administering an appropriation, can incur expenses against the appropriation. So it sort of highlights the tension that we have. In order to get a more connected and joined up public service, to get the agencies working more closely together, to some extent we have to erode the autonomy of an individual chief executive over the way their department spends its money. And yet we are still going to be holding that chief executive to account. They're still going to be the person who comes along to the financial review committee, or to the financial review process at a select committee, to explain how that agency or department has spent its money. So there are going to need to be some pretty clear controls in place here, because different chief executives and different agencies may also be getting slightly conflicting priorities or conflicting directives from the ministers that they work for. And one of the things that I think we risk here, and it's certainly not an insurmountable problem, and I'm supportive of what the bill is trying to achieve, is just making sure that we make it clear that where one department incurring expenses against an appropriation of another department is doing that the accountability is quite clear, and that the lines of decision making are clear, and that we can keep track of what's going on there. And that flows right the way back up the system to ministers as well. Certainly if we take an area, most large areas of government expenditure involve several different departments and agencies. So if we take education, for example, I can think of several issues that we would deal with in education that would involve the Tertiary Education Commission, New Zealand Qualifications Authority, Ministry of Education, and they'd all be working on the same goal. They'd all be working towards the same objective and outcome, and yet at the moment, they are very defined separately, although there is, I guess, a coordinating role for the Ministry of Education in overseeing the work of the other agencies. There are other agencies, Megan Woods has just pointed out, other agencies involved in transitions, career services, various agencies like that. And we want those agencies working together towards a collective goal. We want the government to be able to specify this is the direction that we want to go in these areas, and we want to make sure that they're connected up and that the public finance requirements don't effectively act as a barrier to all the agencies working together. So potentially, it's quite possible that and I certainly think that it's the intention that the changes being made in this legislation will provide opportunities for that to happen. Turning to back to the accountability issue and to the way that accountability information is presented in annual reports, and it is the annual reports effectively that form the starting point for Parliament's scrutiny of how money is spent. When we get together in our select committees and we go over departmental expenditure, we review departments, we look first at the annual reports and then at a whole lot of supporting information that is supplied, and usually in relation to quite extensive questions that members of Parliament will ask through that select committee process. What the changes in this bill before us allow is for annual reports of more than one, Mr. Chair,
Chris Hipkins.
of more than one department to be presented together in one document, where this will provide more meaningful information about the department's performance and achievements. And it will allow end-of-year reporting on appropriations that contribute to a common purpose but are administered by different departments to be presented in one document. So in education, for example, unless I'm incorrect, this could be that we end up with an annual report for education, rather than an annual report for NZQA, an annual report for the TEC, an annual report for the Ministry of Education. Unless I'm mistaken, some clarification on that would be quite good. Then what we do is we get to the point where we start to ask about whether, the other end of the process, some of the documents specifying what we want departments to do should also be common. So rather than the government specifying a statement of intent for all of the different agencies, the government then can start specifying, this is our statement of intent for education, this is what we are trying to achieve in education, and then all of the other things that flow from that contribute to that overall directive. And then the annual reporting coming back again contributes to that. That's all positive in my view. I think that's what we want the public service to be doing, the public sector, all of the agencies to be doing. We don't want to have them competing with each other, and we don't want the siloed mentality. But within that, we've still got to make sure that ultimately at the end of the day someone is responsible and accountable back to the House. We, in our estimates, we get the opportunity to grill ministers on what it is they want money being spent to contribute towards, what the outcomes are that they're trying to seek. We get to grill them a little bit on their plans and on the decisions that they're making. Not always successfully, of course. That relies on them providing the answers. And actually Megan Woods has just raised a very good point. In the scrutiny of all of the votes and all of the departments and agencies that we have through the financial review process, we very much rely on there being timely information to the Select Committee. So, for example, we start, as I mentioned, from the basis, from the annual report. That's the starting point for our scrutiny of where departments are spending their money. But we then ask an extensive range of questions. And normally there'll be around about 100 or 150 standard questions that go to all departments and agencies. And that's actually where we get the really useful information. And then from that, there'll probably be more supplementary questions that go backwards and forwards. Some in a small vote, not very many, or a small department, not very many. In a controversial area or a big spending area like education or health or social development, there'll be a lot of questions. And by getting that information, we're able to give really good scrutiny to what these departments and agencies are doing. If they're not supplied, because ministers simply don't require their departments, pardon me, to supply that information, the Select Committee cannot do its job. And too often, in this year's financial review process, we're seeing that happen. We're seeing agencies not supplying information that's being requested of Select Committees. And even more so in the most recent round of estimates that we have dealt with, where ministers have been asked a whole lot of information and it hasn't been supplied to the Select Committee at the point where ministers are showing up in order to answer questions about it. So how can the Parliament do its job effectively if we're not actually being given the information before the hearings take place? And so one of the things that I'm concerned about, and I guess seek some reassurance from the government about how they're going to handle this, is that in making the information provision more multi-departmental and stretching the boundaries of that a little bit more, we've got to still have a mechanism to ensure that there's accountability, to ensure that the information, that the follow-up information that's requested is actually supplied and is actually provided. It certainly can be done. There's no reason why it can't be done, and we just need to have an assurance that processes will be put in place to allow that to happen. Because I am very concerned that we're departing from some pretty well-established processes, just in practice, around the House at the moment, around Select Committees at the moment, where information isn't being provided in the timely manner that the Select Committees should reasonably be able to expect. And that's of real concern. It's frustrating for us, of course, but it's actually very concerning for the public, because they rely on us as members of Parliament to scrutinise government decision-making, to scrutinise where their money is being spent in a very robust manner, and we're not getting the information that we should to allow us to do that effectively.
Mr Chair.
I call Dr Rajin Prasad.
Thank you, Mr Chairman.